Hey up again folks, so this is my 2009 BMW R1200 GS Adventure. She's got 27,000 miles on the clock. She's in pretty good nick, but due a bit of a cosmetic makeover. I've never been particularly enamoured by this magnesium silver grey finish that came out with the 2009 spec bike. So what I'm going to do is vinyl wrap the two main panels, which is the beak area here and the tank area, or the tank cover rather. And I'm going to do that in a combination of dark green and gold, just to bring the whole thing up to date really. But that's going to require me obviously to remove all these panels, so what I'll be showing you on this video is exactly how you go about removing all of these panels, because we're going to need to do that to give them a good old clean and to remove the existing decals. Okay, so that's what we'll crack on with. Right folks, so as you can see I've got two other bikes in here, so I've just moved the GS to one side to be able to work on her, and I'm just got the camera hands free now, so I'm just going to show you exactly what I'll be doing with which panels before we go on to remove them. So starting at the front end, this beak here, I think this is an additional trim in this sort of luster effect black plastic. Now I think I'll probably be leaving that as is. I'm not entirely sure how well wrap will adhere to this material, particularly since this has had numerous coats of ACF 50 over the months, just to keep it nice and pristine. But the magnesium grey colour, the main part of the beak, is one piece. So this area that you can see here, round either side to the front, that's not two separate pieces, that's all one piece of plastic. So we're going to be removing that, and this I'm going to be wrapping in a gold colour. And the decals then, obviously take these blue ones off, the decals on top of the gold will be dark green. So to complement that, on the tank area here, this will be wrapped in a dark green. And I'll remove obviously these old decals and this tank protector and what have you, and the new badge, the new R1200 badge, will be in gold. So effectively it'll be gold on green and green on gold. And then what I'm also thinking of doing is these side panels here, these are metal, not plastic. So I'm going to look at removing those. Now the only issue here is that the GS sign here is embossed. It's a fairly shallow embossing, but I'm not confident enough in my wrapping skills, because I basically haven't wrapped anything before. I'm not entirely sure whether or not I'll be able to get the wrap, even with the help of the heat gun, to adhere snugly into this embossed sign. So what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to paint them, spray paint them, with a Hammerite smooth gold finish. Now you might think, well, that's going to look a little bit rough and ready when it's finished. However, if you just take a look at the tailpipe section on my Yamaha XJR here, this piece was a little bit pitted in parts. And so I just thought, by way of complementing different colours on the bike, that I would spray this in the Hammerite gold. And I've been very impressed with the results, actually. There's no clear lacquer on there or anything. It's just a case of wet and drying the actual trim, and then spraying with several coats of the Hammerite smooth gold. Now this has been on for the best part of a year now, this paint, and there isn't a mark on it, and the finish is very, very good. So if I can get the panels on the BMW to come out like that, and there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to do that with an adequate amount of preparation, then I think that's probably the best way to go with that. It's a slightly lighter gold than the gold wrap on the beak, but I think you know, a two-tone gold effect, that'll look pretty good. Okay, so coming back to the old GS, I'll obviously need to remove a number of panels. So what we'll need to remove are these top plastic panels on either side. We'll need to remove this plastic trim and its smaller partner on the other side. We'll need to remove these side panels that we're going to paint. We'll need to remove the tank cover, and that will involve also removing the petrol cap assembly. I'll need to remove these Perspex wind deflectors, and basically the idea is that once these external panels are removed, I should be able to get to all the fixings for the two main panels that I want to wrap and actually take them off the bike. While I'm at it, I'll be able to see just what's underneath. I'm sure with a bike as old as this, 10 years old, although she looks superficially very, very clean indeed, I'm not naive enough to believe that that's the case in the dark, dusty corners that I'm going to reveal, obviously, when I take off most of these panels. So just to recap then, we're going to remove the beak trim, the beak assembly, which is going to be wrapped in gold. We're going to remove these panels. We're going to remove the side panels that are going to be painted in gold, and I'm going to remove the tank cover, which will be wrapped in green. So let's crack on with that. Okay folks, so the first panels that we're going to remove are these, where the familiar circular BMW badge sits. Okay, so these are held in place by 1, 2, and back here 3, and they're T25 Torx bolts. So you're going to need either a T25 Torx key or a T25 Torx bit in a screwdriver to remove these 3 Torx bolts. They're not all the same length, so this one here is longer than these two, and similarly if we go to the other side of the bike, it's the same panel, T25 Torx, one there, one there, and the one at the end that's actually longer. So let's crack on and do that now. Right, okay folks, so I'm going to start by removing this panel here, 3 Torx bolts. So a T25 Torx bit in a screwdriver, and we'll just crack these 3 off. So that's the one at the front, which looks like a 15mm in length. One in the middle, okay. As you can see, 15mm in length would appear. Could that be 20? But they're both the same size, these two. But the one at the back is actually a longer bolt. So that's that one removed. As you can see, that panel is now free, and you can see that that's actually a longer bolt. That looks like these are 20s actually, and that's a 30. And that allows this first panel to be removed, and what I suggest you do is leave these torque bolts somewhere securely with the panel, so that you know which go where and you don't lose track. So That was straightforward enough. Okay, now we're on the left hand side of the bike, so the same panel, it's exactly the same really. So we'll start at the back this time. Take out the longer of the T25 Torx bolts. So one, just adjust the bars. Two. And the third one down here that you probably can't see. And again, you can see straight away that that panel comes away, so those are the only fixings. For these panels. And again, so there we are, and again, very good idea. Just pop the bolts back in. And you can also tape these into place with masking tape as well, might be a good idea. So that's both of those off now. Now it's probably worth noting throughout here that most of these panels, the Torx bolts actually screw into these, I suppose you would call them receivers. They're like spring clips with a threaded insert to take the bolts, and these can pop off, so you need to be really careful when you're removing the panels that you don't lose these, because these provide the thread to take the bolt for you. Okay, so the next job is to remove the seats before we go any further. So obviously, as you can see there, I've taken the luggage off to make things easier all round. So seats off, and then we'll tackle some more panels. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is remove these wind deflectors here. I think these would have been an accessory that perhaps the previous owner added, but the actual bolts that retain this wind deflector are actually the original retaining bolts, or two of the original retaining bolts for this front piece, the beak at the front of the bike. So let's crack on with these either side. Again, keep everything together. And again, wind deflector on the left hand side. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is remove this filler cap assembly. So this basically sits in a recess in this panel here, which will prevent the panel from being removed. So we need to remove this assembly. So, I mean, first thing obviously is to undo the cap, and if you look in there, hopefully you can see a number of, again, T25 Torx bolts. Now you'll see one at the 12 o'clock position there. You need to leave that one alone. The four that you need to remove are the two here on this side and the two here on this side, and they are actually the retaining bolts for this assembly. Right, so hopefully you can see the 4 T25 bolts that we're going to be removing. 1, 2, 3, 4. This one here, leave well alone. That's holding another assembly in place underneath, so it's just these 4 here. Okay, and out she comes. Easy. Good idea before you store this away is to shut the flap there. That way you're not going to lose those bolts. But as you can see, the 12 o'clock position bolt there that I told you to leave well alone, that's one of these 3 which holds this sub-assembly in place. Okay, so now we're at the right hand side of the bike, and we're going to remove this metal black side panel here. Now this is held in place by 3 T25 Torx bolts, but the bottom one here you can see also retains this plastic panel here. Now, in addition to this bolt fulfilling those 2 functions, this plastic panel has a couple of the prongs into grommets, locking mechanisms underneath. It's just a matter of popping them out with your hands. So we'll just remove these 3, and that should enable us to take off this metal panel and this plastic one. This one here is purely attached to this plastic cover, so this screw here, this Torx bolt, does not attach this panel to the main assembly of the bike, just to the plastic cover, and it's the same on the other side. That's 1. 2. Just while I'm doing this, I think I should mention that you're probably asking yourselves, how come I know where all these bolts are and what they do, and the only reason for that is I've had one dry run. So what I did yesterday was I took all these panels off and put them back on again, just so that I would have some idea of how to navigate my way around removing all the panels. What I did find, once I put all the panels back and everything was hunky-dory, nothing loose, is I have 2 Torx bolts left over. So I can't quite remember where those go, but I notice there's a space there, but no, that's for the other panel. But somewhere here I'm going to find 2 holes that are missing a bolt, so we'll see. Okay, so this panel now comes away, and you can see where the bolts fit. I'll just pop it there, and the bolt also retains this plastic panel, and underneath it's got the prongs that go into grommets. And if I just pull that away, you can see there's 2 prongs there that go into grommet holes. Okay, so we're just on the left hand side of the bike again, and again for this side panel here, there are bolts there and there, and also one under this plastic panel here, and this is just again on the prongs into grommet, so just give this one a little tug, and that comes away without any other fixings. And the third Torx bolt for this panel here is right down there. So, okay, one. Two, and again this one just purely is fastening the side panel to the tank cover. Some of these can be quite stiff. Okay. And the last one's down here. And there we go. That's the left hand side one off. Right, okay, so now we have everything fixing wise removed that we need to remove to be able to take off this main piece here, this tank cover. So we've removed the bolts at the sides, we've taken out the filler cap assembly, and all that remains to be done now is just to pull this backwards, because these two tines, if you like, these two protrusions here, basically slot in to the beak assembly, this beak assembly here, but they're not actually fixed in with anything, so it's just a matter of pulling it away. And you can see there are like two lugs there and there which basically slide over these projections on this part of the beak assembly. So when you come to reassemble this, obviously you need to align these parts actually into these lugs here. Okay, and round to the other side of the beak, and this is the one where I've put a nut on the back basically to replace the threaded clip. So I'll just put a grip on that, make sure it doesn't spin, and that just feels a lot more positive, and I don't know why BMW didn't choose to do it that way. For example, with there she goes, a locking nut behind. I mean, as you can see, that's not a locking nut, but it did the job for the time being. I think what I'll do on either side of this assembly, when I come to put everything back together again, is I'll use two M5 locking nuts. So that's all that holds this beak in place, and it's just a matter of pulling it away. And as you can see, the original beak profile there. So I think this was a later accessory, I'm not sure, but anyway, that's off now. Alright, so now we're in the final stages of removing all the bolts that will allow us to remove this entire one piece beak assembly. So there's a bolt down here, same on the other side, and there are these little plastic trims inside which are attached to the main frame of the bike, and they just need to be removed, and they just pop up like so. So there's no actual fixings in there, there are three lugs here that clip into those recesses. And then we can remove this bolt here, yet another T25. Okay. So similarly on the right hand side, you have this plastic piece here which you just pull up, and that's again, you can see the 3 lugs that just clip into those 3 holes there. There's a bolt here. And I would have thought those 2 holes I was looking for the bolts that I'd clearly forgotten during reassembly would have manifested themselves by now, but not yet. Wonder where they are. Anyway, so that's all the fixings for the beak hopefully removed now. Should allow it to come away. So you just need to, it's quite flexible, but you just need to pull it clear of these assemblies and pull it forward. And the indicators do tend to get in the way, but there we go. So there we have one beak assembly. Okay, so that's everything removed from the bike that I need to remove to do the wrapping or to do the prepping, really. So I think you'll agree that was fairly straightforward. All in all, there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 parts to remove, mainly panels, sorry, 10 parts if you include the wind deflectors, but mainly panels, and also that filler cap assembly there. So there's a bit of a whiff of petrol now, obviously, but everything on the bike that needs to be off is off. This is a good opportunity for me to take a scout round the bike and just see generally what sort of condition she's in for a 10-year-old bike. I mean, as you can probably see, there's a little bit of surface corrosion going on here and here. It's nothing too serious, but I will, while I've got all the panels off, I will address that. Obviously take off the corrosion, give it some protection and coating of some description. But there's a pretty much stark naked BMW R1200 GS Adventure.